Good morning, everybody. It's super early over here where I'm at, and there's a lot of crazy things going on in the world. I hope that you guys are all safe and standing up for what you believe in. But today I would like to talk to you guys about a very important topic that I don't think is discussed enough on YouTube. It's called gear lust. Now, gear lust is when you get a new piece of either hardware or software, and then you start realizing that maybe what you just bought doesn't do all the cool things that you think that it needs to do. And so you start wanting more stuff, or you want to start collecting. You want more VSTs, you want more effects, you want more keyboards. It's a pretty bad trap. And honestly, I think that's one of the most successful things that people that are in the music industry, even maybe as far as the electronic music industry it goes, that people get, kind of snared into. Sorry, I was at a loss for words for a sec. So how do you avoid it? And when is it time to say stop? Or when is it time to decide that what you have is enough? Well, first of all, in order to kind of get to that point, you need to have yourself established as an artist already. And I'm not talking about as far as having fans and stuff, but about knowing who you are and what tools you need. These days, I use a lot less synthesizers than I initially thought that I would. Let's see, I'm a big fan of Kiloheart's Faceplant. I use Omnisphere from time to time. And every once in a while, I still use something from maybe Native Instruments. But for the most part, all of the main tools and things that I have are all post-processing. And the reason why is because I usually end up taking a sound or a sample anyways and processing it with a bunch of effects that help me create unique sounds that I'm happy with. For some of you guys, you might have your own workflow of, man, I just want a preset and I want to find that, particular thing and use that for my track immediately, because some of you guys write in that quote-unquote efficient manner. But in order for us to kind of take a look at what goes into the synthesizers and effects and stuff, we need to make sure that we are refining our own skill set with the vocabulary of what synthesizers do what, and also what effects do what, and how we can maybe cross use them into performing multiple things. For example, I'm sure that most of you guys know, but you can actually use a compressor in some ways or another into a means of distortion. If you were to take a sine wave and crush it through a little bit of, if you were to take a sine wave and some white noise that's very low volume and crush it through a glue compressor, then you would have the quote-unquote sine compression bass that's really popular in halftime. There is a little bit more to it, of course, but in essence, that gives you the overall character of the sound that you're trying to create. And it's kind of hard if you don't know sound design. You're like, man, I don't know anything about this, and this looks like something that I need. The number one thing that I think that you guys should avoid is looking up your favorite artist and trying to figure out what tools they use. Because for one, most of the time the way that they use those tools aren't going to be in the same way that you're going to know how, unless if they show you. And secondly, just because they use something doesn't mean that it's going to be useful to you. For example, when I first started music, I was really into Seven Lions, and I looked up what DAW he used, and I also looked up what instruments and VSTs he used, and I bought Sylenth 1. And Sylenth 1 is a great synthesizer, but it's not for me. It's not something that I end up using a lot because I just don't have any use for it. In fact, I think it's a pretty basic subtractive synth. It's not to say that you can't do some cool stuff in there and that you can't make complex things. It's just for what it is. It sounds great. It's got some great algorithms, but compared to something like Serum, compared to something like Faceplant or Falcon, it's not quite up there because it only does subtractive synthesis. So what do you need for your personal thing? Of course, that's like hard to figure out, because whatever your needs are for your personal taste is going to be ultimately up to you. But here are some kind of like common things that you can look out for. For one, you need to look at all the tools that your DAW has and look at what effects those come with and see what kind of things maybe other DAWs have that yours might not, and figure out if there's a way to kind of like bridge that gap in between. For example, there's no glue compressor on Bitwig. I bit the bullet on that one and just bought the Cytomic one. Did I need it? Debatable. But it also has a lot of other tools that are really cool. For example, before Live 10, they didn't actually have a transient shaper, and Bitwig had a transient shaper. And, you know, then it should kind of pose the question of being like, all right, well, what is a transient shaper doing actually? Because then in essence, it pretty much is in some way or another some kind of complex compressor of some sort. So those are some things to keep in mind. As far as synthesis goes, we have additive, we have subtractive, we have granular, we've got FM, we've got spectral in some cases, which is debatable as like an actual synthesizer, and those are pretty much like the main ones. But does it achieve does it do everything that you feel like it needs to do? One big trap that you guys should avoid is looking at a YouTube tutorial and thinking just because they're using, you know, FM8 that you can't use citrus, that you can't find a way to cross-pollinate or to, you know, use this information in order to create some of these same sounds. It's more so about having the mindset of saying, okay, well, maybe I don't have that feature, but maybe I can explore with using some of the other features that are native to the plugin that I'm using, and instead kind of trying to make your own variation out of it. I think one of the major problems with watching sound design tutorials, and this goes for all of you guys, myself included, is that we try to recreate something exactly. And if you have watched any of my recent videos, you would know that I advise against it. Instead, like I always say, you need to understand the fundamentals and the kind of like components of what goes into making the sound, but also like respect the artistry of what you're trying to accomplish. That's why I don't do those how-to videos or how to sound like this person, how to sound like this person, because honestly, for the most part, it's just clickbait. Some people do a really good job at recreating some other people, and, you know, more power to them. But for somebody that's just starting out, you can't expect to make professional sounds just from watching a single video on your first go. Like, it's going to take you some practice. You're going to have to do it a few times over and a few times over. And then, like, okay, say you do make all the sounds that your favorite artist does, and you're like, you know, what, you want people to think that it's you? Or you want people to think that your music is theirs? No, like, you, at least in my opinion anyways, you should be like, yo, dog, like, this is my own stuff, and I might sound kind of like this person, but here's my unique spin on it, or here's how I evolved a lot of these sounds. One of the biggest reasons why I posted that video yesterday of how to make these generative things is because I was actually really surprised at how monstery some of those sounds were, especially when you get into post-processing. And I was like, man, if I were to just goof around and throw a bunch of things together in such a way 5 years ago, I feel like I would have been way further in making, you know, the cool sounds that I've always been aspiring to when I first started. So in regards to hardware, it's a little bit different because sometimes the hardware things that come with whatever perform unique functions. Like, it's really easy to get caught up in getting a different amp or a different cabinet or something because it has a specific character, right? But that's kind of like where you have to draw the line. You know, if you already have a MIDI keyboard that's pretty sick, even if it's a little bit outdated, do you need to upgrade to the latest features? Probably not. Like, what just came out? The Ableton MPC Live 2 just came out. It's the exact same thing, except now it has a speaker on it. Do you need to go buy it? No. Should you if you can afford it? Maybe. I mean, you know, you're gonna have to, you would most likely sell the one that you have to replace the new model and all that stuff, but you're still, you know, getting caught up in some of those moments. So in essence, like, I'm not telling you to not upgrade and to not buy things, because quite frankly, like, part of the reason why music has become so cool and amazing in my opinion is because all of these awesome plugins come out. But there will be a time in your journey, and I guarantee this, that you will say, man, I really don't need all this stuff that I have. And rather than like treating like, I hope that you guys don't regret any of this too, because sometimes you have to make some of these purchases or use some of these things in order to figure out that it's not for you. But try to focus on, you know, what exactly do you need, or what exactly is the sound that you're trying to achieve. And that's a really difficult thing to do, especially because a lot of these sounds don't have like a name. I can't just be like, oh, well, Noisea's neuro bass is just like this guitar, and I can go and find that out without having like a huge background of research and of knowing who those artists are, as opposed to just hearing it on the radio or something. But you get what I'm saying, right? So take some time. My other advice to you guys is, if you are starting to explore sound design, as opposed to looking up how to sound like other artists, read the manual, which I'm sure nobody does, and start testing things and throwing things together in such a way that is creating unpredictable results that you'd otherwise normally wouldn't do. Don't be afraid to touch knobs. Don't be afraid to automate things. Don't be afraid to just slap something on together and see how it sounds. That's the reason why I like doing randomization so much, because if I were to try to methodically like map out all those things over automation that I did yesterday, it would be a nightmare. And it would and just changing the sound one time to tweak all those things would just be absolutely abysmal. But again, that's, just one major reason why I like, Bitwig. Ableton can do it as well. Surely there are some modulators or randomizers and stuff that you can use in other DAWs, or, consider Phaseplant, because Phaseplant has a bunch of randomization things that will give you something different every time. So with that, I hope that gives you guys a little bit of insight. I know that it wasn't the most complex thing, but I want you to be aware of what Gearlust is, and I want you to be aware of when you're making a purchase and trying to be honest with yourself of whether or not you really need this thing to make your music better. I considered a lot of stuff, especially buying FabFilter plugins. Did I actually need them? Especially with what I'm using now with regular DAW stuff? I don't know, but I think that those plugins are so good that it doesn't matter whether or not I needed them. I think that they did make my production better. Likewise, I ended up purchasing something like Falcon. I ended up purchasing Complete Ultimate 10. I ended up purchasing some other things that I don't use anymore, and I had fun with them, but I don't need them, at least not anymore. So that's it for you guys. Hopefully you guys can kind of, gain some insight on this stuff, and if you want to talk about Gearlust and your experience and all that, I would like to advise you to do that in the comments. Finally, as just the last plugin, I've got a bunch of stuff on my store. My EP just came out. You can go download it, listen to it for free, or pay what you want, and then I just put out a pack called Abhorrent Mech, and that's also free / pay what you want. That includes the preset from the teaser that I posted 2 days ago. But let me know what you guys think about all this stuff, and consider joining all of the things that I have that you can support me with, and I hope that you guys have an amazing day. Stay safe.